המידע שיש ברשות הצבא, עדכני, ליאת מוחזקת על ידי פרופסור ברפואה.
רגע.
It is so hard not knowing what's going on with her. My biggest worry is that she's not with us anymore.
We're being led by crazy people, whether it's on the Israeli side or whether on the Palestinian side. And the result is all this death and destruction.
Yehuda and I deal with problems differently.
The struggle for peace and reconciliation is the best way to respect Liat and Aviv and provide a human side to the story.
I'm not going to thank them for abducting my parents and murdering my acquaintances.
Let's just figure out where Liat and Aviv are. Let's just focus on that, Abba.
We want to be supportive of the family, and on the other hand, I'm here and I disagree politically.
Sometimes it's better to just be quiet. Because you know what? For getting Liat and Aviv back, put a yarmulke on your head.
No, I'm not going to run away. I'll stand my ground.
There's no way of knowing how much longer this is going to go on.
Who's holding her? Is she in a house? Is she in a cave? Is she being fed? Does she have her glasses? The longer it takes, the harder it is to stay positive.
There's no guarantee that either of them are cutting out of this alive.
טוב, קיבלנו את הרשימה עכשיו, ולצערי, ליאת לא ברשימה גם של היום.
I want them back. What are you making it so you so understanding about their considerations? They're playing games.
I feel your pain. I lost half of my family so far.
I think every person in Israel, and I'm sure that on the Palestinian side, has someone that they have lost. So how do you even begin to coexist in that violent cycle?
Your story is quite unusual. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about what you remember?
Hi, this is Chuck Braverman. This is another new episode of Westdoc Online. Today we are featuring a new feature-length documentary called Holding Liat by Brandon Kramer and his brother Lance Kramer. And it is a very compelling, emotional, moving documentary. Let's get right into it and say hi to the guys. Hi, Brandon. Hi, Lance. How are you?
Hi, Chuck. It's great to be in conversation with you. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, great to be here.
Thank you. You asked me a minute ago before we started recording where I was located, but let me ask you, where are you located, Lance?
So I am calling you from Washington, D.C., which is home for
Brandon?
me. I thankfully am home right now. I haven't been home very much recently.
I live in D.C. as well. We live 10 minutes apart from each other.
And I'm in a suburb of Los Angeles. So it's 3 hours earlier here. It's in the morning here. It's lunchtime there. Do you have snow now in Washington, or is it really chilly?
Far from it. We don't get very much of that these days, sadly.
As kids, we got a lot of snow. Nowadays, it doesn't really snow anymore.
Which one of you is older, and by how much, if I can ask?
Sure. We technically, I'm the older brother, so I'm 3 years older. But I say technically because I feel like in our work together, we're probably more like twins than older, younger brother, though sometimes sibling dynamics still play out. But
let's talk a little bit about Holding Liat, which is about, well, I have to say relatives right off the hat, but I don't know. It's in nothing that I have read does it say exactly what your relation was to the family that was kidnapped on October the 7th, which is the American Israeli family. And what is the relationship?
Our cousin our cousin was married to Liat's cousin. So the biological connection is through marriage, through our cousins. And but Lance and I have known them for over 20 years. When Lance and I first visited Israel, we stayed on Liat's parents' kibbutz for a week. And that was kind of our introduction to Israeli culture, Israeli society, was through Yehuda and Chaya. So when Liat was taken, it was a significant thing. We were just at a bat mitzvah with Liat and Aviv and their whole family 2 months before Liat was taken in Portland, Oregon. And so, it was, even though the blood relation is distant, we're very close with them. And it was a huge shock to us when that happened. And, we immediately reached out to them to see any ways that we could be supportive or help them, not thinking that a film would be the way, we would show up. That was a process over several days and weeks where that evolved.
And at what point did you guys look at each other and say, hey, maybe we should be filming this?
Well, the conversation that we had, Yehuda called us and told us.
So let's make it clear to the audience. Yehuda is the father.
Yehuda is
father
Liat Atsili's father. Liat and Aviv are a husband and wife that were both taken. And Yehuda, we had a call with him about a week after October 7th, where he shared with us that he was getting no response from the Israeli government, and he was planning to get on a plane and come to Washington, D.C. to advocate for Liat and Aviv's release from captivity. And Lance and I are filmmakers and live in D.C., and so we connected first and foremost just on ways that we could be helpful to them. And what started as an idea of filming with them for a few days, before and during that visit, just to put something short together to raise awareness around Liat's captivity, very quickly evolved into a film, mainly because what we were filming was, we were so taken by both the unique perspective that Liat's family was holding in that moment. There's a lot of media attention on the hostages and the hostage families. No one was telling a story about a father of a hostage who wanted to use this moment to call for peace and reconciliation. That story didn't exist in the world. No one was talking about the political divisions within families affected by this conflict. And so we just felt like this was a moment where the whole world was looking to the hostage families as a source of understanding this conflict, and the story was being heavily reduced and simplified. And we had an opportunity to tell a much more complex and different story that's really only possible through documentary or journalism.
And what were the hurdles or logistics and budgetary considerations jumping in with both feet here and flying back and forth to Israel, I assume more than once, and to Portland? And I'm going to throw in another zinger here. And then how did Darren Aronofsky get involved, and what was his involvement? So I'm just sort of amazed that you seem to be there and get everything, and it was beautifully shot and beautifully edited. But there must have been a point, because you didn't know where the film was going. You didn't know if you have a commitment. You didn't know if you'd had a film. So how did you proceed?
Yeah, if we're talking about the challenges, how long is your show? we could talk for days about the challenges. Really daunting and difficult because, we had this situation unfolding extremely rapidly. Every day there's an influx of new information and new details emerging, and travel, and like you said, all these logistics that are just happening without a film. The pace of the crisis was unfolding at warp speed. And then to make a film is obviously a whole other apparatus. We did not have the backing of a studio production. We had our own little company, but that was it. There was no time for pre-production because this is something that we were not thinking about before October 7th. So there was no like, oh, we're going to write a grant and then send it off and try to get support. Everything was happening in real time. And so what it really required us to do was, first and foremost, just like call on every single experience we had in the past, all of our relationships from the past of filmmakers we work with, just like friends, family. We just kind of called on as many people as we could right away, which looked like a small group of producers, friends of mine, who initially kind of came together to help raise money. And we raised donations to basically cover those early costs of the early shoots. And that just continued basically for a year and a half, where we were just constantly raising, small and then increasingly larger contributions. And there was a kind of core group of about 12 independent producers that really just rallied to help, reach out to their past funders and even made contributions themselves. And it was 100% philanthropic, just donations that paid for the film. And then we reached out very, very quickly to our dear friend Yoni Brook, who's a cinematographer, brilliant cinematographer out of Philly. And we felt that if we were going to start to document the story, even not knowing where it was going to go, we wanted it to be done with as much artistry as possible and care. And we felt that Yoni was the absolute best person to be able to entrust with that responsibility. And thankfully he agreed to join us. So he became a very, very early collaborator almost from day one. And then eventually also became a producer with us, because it was just so complicated to figure out these logistics way beyond anything I could do on my own. Darren came on board really through Yoni, because you have to remember that 2/3 of the film was filmed in 54 days. 2/3 of the film, basically everything up until when Liat was released, was documented during those 54 days. So it was an incredibly intense period of time. And a few weeks after Liat was released, Yoni reached out to Darren, who he knew as a friend, and he had worked together with Darren a little bit on a prior film. And Yoni sent Darren a little bit of footage from some of the material that we had shot with the family. And really just, this was like around the holidays, 2023, and just reached out to Darren and said, look, I just was a part of this. I am a part of this film. We don't even know, is it going to be a feature, a short? We don't even know if it's a film, but we just had this intense experience. We're trying to figure out, what to do, where to go. And we could really use your advice, and we think it might be something you'd be interested in. And he sent him like 5 or 10 minutes of material. And Darren wrote back right away and said, I just want to help. Like, let me know what I can do. And from there, it, merged into this, co-production with his company. And he's been just this amazing champion. But it really just kind of emerged through that initial just kind of friendly outreach. And it's been kind of like stories like that, on repeat for how people have come on board to help make this a reality.
You're in an amazing place with the film right now, As I've said on this show a bunch of times, there's, I don't know how many films, I guess over 200 films submitted to the Motion Picture Academy. And you've made the short list, which is a dozen films or so, which is amazing. Because you're up against, Netflix and HBO and all these players with a lot of dough and a lot of big PR. And it's because the film is very well made, and it's dramatic, and it tells an amazing story. What's the current status of the film in terms of distribution? Do you know? Where can people see this film?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's for us, it's really remarkable that the film is where it is. I mean, to be like on this show with you talking about the film 2 years later, with it being shortlisted, is so far beyond anything we could have imagined. When, Brandon was mentioning we got on that first call with Yehuda. So this is really, we have to kind of still almost like blink and take stock of where we are, because it is an independent film. It doesn't have a US distributor. We're self-distributing the film. Like I said, all the film's budget was paid for through donations, and a few small grants. And it's just been like the film has been its own propulsion.
And can people log in somewhere and watch it?
Yeah. So what's happened, like, I'm really excited now because what we're really on the precipice of releasing is we're about to walk into a very big month for the film. It will have its US theatrical release, which we're doing as a self-release in partnership with an organization out of LA called the Film Collaborative, who handled all of our festival screenings, and they're working with us to do a theatrical release that will start with the Film Forum. So in New York, it's opening at the Film Forum on January 9th, and we'll be there for at least 2 weeks. We hope it will be there much more. People hopefully come out to support the film. And it will be opening in LA on January 16th at the Laemmle Theaters. And then throughout January and February, we have a whole slate of other independent theaters where the film will be released in Cleveland, Portland, Oregon, Boston, DC area at the AFI. We were talking about the AFI earlier. They're going to play the film. And really, we hope that the film, particularly if the film advances in the awards conversation, or if hopefully the response is strong at Film Forum, that it just continues to grow from there. And it's already been distributed and released in almost a dozen other countries as well. So we have a distributor. It's broadcast on the BBC in the UK. It was broadcast in Israel. This year in 2026, it's going to be released on ZDF in Germany. And we have a Japanese distributor who's going to be releasing it in theaters as well as in France. So it's kind of been this amazing global reach as well. And and so if it's not playing in someone's home who's listening or hometown, then also they should reach out to us, because we would love to add that city to the list.
Well, I must say, in LA, the Laemmle Theaters have been fabulous. They're one of the few small chains. They have maybe, I don't know how many theaters here, maybe half a dozen theaters all over LA. They come from a storied, famous showbiz family, the Laemmle family, and they're the only ones that are really running independent films, that aren't running, Wicked and Superman. They're showing the indies that are some really great movies. The film, what we haven't discussed, and I think is so unique about the film, is the conflict within the film and the family in terms of Yehuda, trying to push for lasting peace, and the relatives are saying, just shut up and we just want to get our daughter back, right? And there's sort of a built-in conflict there, which gets very dramatic. And I must say, it's probably one of the first times in a national platform like this that you hear the Palestinian side of the story, and not that he's pushing the Palestinian side, but he's saying, hey, there's two sides to this story.
Walking that ethical line of how do we first and foremost show up as family members, as people that love this family and want to be there to support and care, and also documentarians that are filming and observing and bearing witness to them going through impossibly difficult moments that are resulting in 2 a.m. moments of tension. And the family really had a huge amount of courage and trust in letting us in. I mean, we were sleeping on the floor outside of their hotel room so we could film 2 a.m. phone calls that they're getting from the IDF in the middle of the night. We're living in their home on their kibbutz. This was a very intimately filmed movie that the family took a huge leap of faith on letting us in.
And what did they say when they saw the film? I assume you showed them the film in advance. I'm curious as to what the reactions were, especially Yehuda and his wife and
yeah, our ethics with this kind of work, with all of our films, is we always show all of the protagonists the film before it's picture locked. So, they weren't involved in the edit at all, but once the film is our version of being a picture locked film, we had one-on-one screenings with every single one of them. And we told them in the beginning, before we started filming, that if you have an issue with the film, if you feel like you're misrepresented, then we're going to talk about it. We might argue, we might fight for, why we think the film is true to your, what we're seeing your experience to be. But if you feel like we misrepresented you, we'll listen and we'll, make a change. And we had one-on-one screenings with everybody, and we didn't have to make a single edit after that screening. After those screenings, those whatever they were, 8 screenings, telling a story of an Israeli-American family who are suffering their own loss at a moment where tens of thousands of Palestinians are being killed and Palestinians are being forcibly displaced from their land in the West Bank. Children are starving. I'm a believer that you do not need to choose where to place empathy, that empathy for humans who are suffering, whether it's a hostage family or children in Gaza, you can have space for all of that. But it is still a question that we had to ask ourselves every day is, can we tell this story while this atrocity is happening on the other side of the fence? And the fact that Liat's father, and Liat in particular herself, made this choice themselves to channel their grief toward empathy for suffering on the other side of the fence was an extraordinary gift to us as filmmakers, because it's a profound thing to lose your husband, have your community and your home destroyed, almost lose your children, be taken hostage, and emerge with obviously empathy for your own community and your own country, but to have empathy and care and not want a single person on the other side of the fence to be harmed in retribution for what happened to you. That's a rare human reaction to an atrocity that she suffered. And as a storyteller, it was a beautiful thing to witness.
There's a moment in the film that I assume is spontaneous and that you seem to just capture by accident in the hallway when the Muslim man came up to Yehuda. I can't even describe it. It's so emotional and moving. What were your thoughts when that happened? Could you hear everything that was going on while it was happening, or did you not hear it until you had to hear it on film? Or what did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, when you make a film like this, it's, everything is observational. So every day you wake up, you don't know what you're going to film. You're following things as they unfold, and you wind up with hundreds of hours of footage of very boring things of nothing happening. And the reason you do that is because in the crevices of these moments, something really profound happens. And that day we were following Yehuda through the halls of Congress. He did an interview with a news outlet, and this Palestinian activist and artist, Ahmed Mansour, saw Yehuda doing an interview and approached him. And this Ahmed had just lost his sister. He lost half of his family in Gaza from the conflict. And this extraordinary moment just unfolded completely serendipitously. I'd never met Ahmed before. And what was so amazing about the moment is there's this warmth in them being these two bereaved family members meeting in of all places in the halls of Congress. Of all places, they're there advocating for their families and their communities, and seeing the humanity in each other. And at the same time, there's an iciness and a coldness to it as well that felt very palpable. And then on top of all of that, they're whispering to each other because Yehuda doesn't want the people he's with to hear what he's saying, because he's nervous that that moment of connection with a Palestinian man would be perceived in a certain way with the lobbyists and activists that he was traveling with. And so the layers that unfold, there's a subtext to that scene that I think says a lot. And it's the edit of that scene is what you see in the movie is basically it's practically unedited. It's basically the whole encounter.
Yeah, the whole thing is maybe 90 seconds.
Yeah.
And it's the stuff you cannot make up. You can't create. Nobody would believe it. And it's extremely powerful. How many hours of footage do you think that you shot, and what was the post process?
I don't know the exact number, but my guess would be between 300 and 400 hours. That's my guess. The post process was extraordinarily complex, led by a brilliant, deeply ethical editor, Jeff Gilbert, who's based in LA as well. And basically, Lance really was insistent that we not cut corners editorially with this movie, but that we finish it as fast as we possibly can without cutting corners. And so what we did was something we've never done before, which was Jeff edited the first 2/3 of the film, basically everything that was filmed leading up until Liat's release, while we were filming the last third of the film with Liat. So we were going between, I was going between LA, working with Jeff on the edit, to Israel and Portland, Oregon, and DC, filming, this last chapter of the film. And we were actually working with this incredible producer in Israel, Hila Medalia, who really led that effort to document Liat's, story toward the end of the film. But, Jeff's guiding ethic in the edit was he had the word family written on the wall of his edit suite. And he was just like, I'm keeping this story locked into the frame of this family. That's what we're doing here. And, really fought hard to make sure that the complexity of each person's experience stayed intact, which is a very difficult thing to do in this polarized and political climate, because what would happen is there's a gravitational pull when you're editing a movie dealing with a third rail issue like this to protect yourself from political attacks that you expect the film to receive. And so you wind up starting to, without even knowing it, reducing and simplifying and defensively editing the film out of fear, to protect, the film from being misinterpreted or judged. And a lot of the edit process was, doing that without even realizing it, and then undoing it and allowing characters to have, their full range of views and experiences, and being comfortable with that. There's moments in this film that are going to be very uncomfortable for different audiences at different times. And I've sat in theaters with deeply progressive audience members where there's certain minutes or moments that I know are really hard to watch. And I've sat in theaters with deeply conservative audience members where it's a different, minute marker to minute marker that's difficult for them to watch. And but the beauty is that, the movie is accomplishing something I think is pretty rare in this moment, where it's one film inviting a diversity of ideology and politics into the same space in a moment where most of us are living in a space where, when we're dealing with Israel-Palestine and we're engaging with a narrative, we're seeing it's bifurcated. People are seeing one version of a story or one version of a story. And I think the complexity of this family's experience kind of opens up space for people with different views to be, in dialogue with one another.
I always ask, and sometimes I get a really direct, very accurate answer, or sometimes not, but I like to ask, what was the budget, or what is the budget of the film, or the area of the budget? Can you talk about that?
Sure. Yeah, I'm pretty transparent about this stuff. It cost a little over $1 million to make the film. And like I said, it was all fun. We had to fundraise through donations and a few grants for the whole budget within that, year and a half period of time. Part of that, like our line item in that is also like a small part of it. I mean, I'm one of the reasons why I'll leave that in the eye of the beholder, whether that's a lot of money or a little bit of money. But one of the reasons why it is what it is because every person who we work with, I feel a very strong responsibility to pay for their labor as working independent artists. So, the translators, we had like 15 different translators who worked on the material, and assistant editor, associate editor, post supervisor, composer, music supervisor. I mean, there's just a whole apparatus of independent artists that worked on the film, more than what might be expected from a film that was born out of Brandon and Yoni, moments like Brandon and Yoni sleeping outside the hotel room. That's what was required to be present. But then there's this, you can imagine just a whole team that you have to call upon to make the film, particularly that rapidly. And we feel really strongly that they need to be paid because it's such a hard world we're living in, working as independent artists. So anyways, that's where the money really, the rubber meets the road. But sorry, you were...
I don't know the backstory of you guys, but I hope you're both independently wealthy because
we're not.
The world, as you know, despite the fact that there were 200 plus feature films docs submitted to the Academy, and by the way, as a member of the Academy, I've watched a lot of them. There are a lot of very, very good films, but that's the good news. The bad news is the bottom seems to have dropped out of the let's make some money in documentary world.
You should see how many fundraising emails we have. My entire tabs of my if you look at my browser right now, it's 5 tabs of me asking people to donate to this impact campaign for a film.
And do you have a sales rep? Are they going out to try and to Netflix and HBO and Hulu, and I don't know, I'm running out of potential buyers now. I assume they've been there and been rejected or not, or can you?
Well, I could tell you. I mean, I could tell you. I'm pretty transparent about all this stuff. I always feel that transparency is really important. first of all, we're not independently wealthy. I mean, I'm fortunate to have an apartment that I'm living in, have a small 1-bedroom place that's cozy, but we're living, basically as independent filmmakers. This is our livelihood. So, we're not kind of sitting on some nest egg that's enabling us to be able to do this, which is why we're hustling all the time. We actually just thought, having made 2 independent features before that I'm very proud of, but also were very hard to distribute, that we thought maybe this film would be the kind of film that might get the support of one of the bigger companies at an earlier point because of the nature of what we were dealing with. And we actually had the opportunity to pitch to a few of them early, like just a few months into the process. And we got response from a few of them that they were very impressed by what we were doing. They thought it was very important, and they were very, very scared of anything touching Israel-Palestine. And they basically said, come back and talk to us after you're done, and when we can actually see it. But the idea, they could not support the idea of it because it was too scary. So we just felt like if it was going to be made, we had to figure out a way to do it on our own, which I was not happy about because it was such a daunting task to take it on, the making of, and then also the distribution and the release. It's really hard to do that independently as well. And we took that responsibility. We took the challenge, fundraised ourselves, finished the film. It premiered at Berlin. It won the award at Berlin. We went to Berlin without a sales agent. We were not able to get a sales agent before Berlin. We tried, and we were not able to get one. We were able to then secure an international sales agent after Berlin. Really, really amazing company called Met Film out of the UK. We actually gave them, they're an international distributor or sales agent, but we gave them worldwide rights to also work on the US, North America. And they went to all the big players after Berlin in the US to say, look, this film won the same award that No Other Land won.
Well, that's it. I was going to just bring up No Other Land, which is...
And they, they went to basically all the big players and said, look, this is your chance to basically take the film now before we go out to everyone. No one committed at that point. And what we decided was that rather than waiting for someone to make up their mind and get behind the film, we were just going to keep moving forward because we had a faith that there was interest in the film. And sure enough, that was the case. And Met Film wound up, like I was mentioning, securing all these other international distributors, Japan, UK, Austria, Germany. And then we came up with this plan to release the film theatrically on our own here in the US. And we ran the campaign for awards on our own, very grassroots fashion. And the hope is that maybe out of all this activity, particularly with the theatrical release, and if the film is so fortunate to advance with the awards race, that there might be a streaming company or a broadcaster that would be interested, at this stage. And if not, we would be thrilled. And I think that the film is worthy and there's certainly the demand for it. And if not, we'll keep finding a way to release it ourselves or, with something more DIY. But, I think you're right that it's kind of a tragedy that the bottom has fallen out and that films dealing with particularly politically sensitive themes have really been boxed out of a lot of these spaces because these are stories that are on people's hearts and minds, and it impacts a lot of people's lives. And I think that I'd like to see these platforms deal with those kinds of meaningful stories much more directly. I think there's an audience for it.
Well, I think it's great that you've got, I think you said, what do you have, the BBC or some UK distribution, and Japanese.
BBC Storyville. Yeah, BBC
Storyville. Well, that's like the 60 Minutes of the UK, which they have a fabulous reputation. And it's an embarrassment to the United States that these major companies don't have the guts to pick up this project. But of course, we know all the politics that are going on. Let me switch subjects for just a second. I'd like to ask the little geeky questions. What camera did Yoni or was used most of the time? It looks beautiful, beautifully shot. And of course, it's not the camera, it's the cameraman. But I'm just curious, was there a camera or was there a bunch of different cameras?
I actually, Lance, you might know this question better than I'm so unbelievably not tech savvy.
Yoni shot with a Canon C300. Almost all the film is shot with the C300, I think Mark III. It's Yoni. It's not the camera.
Of course, it's always the cameraman. But you could have shot with an iPhone,
I was going to say that part of the film is actually shot with an iPhone. There's a handful of scenes that, the hospital scene, for example, that's all shot.
And you can't tell. It looks pretty good. And here's the most geeky question of all: what non-linear editing system did your editor use?
Oh yeah, we cut an Avid.
Avid. Wow, I don't hear that too often in docs these days.
Yeah, we cut Holding Liat and also our prior film, The First Step, in Avid. There was so many different hurdles that this film has had to face and cross, and one of the big ones, which was we were talking about with distribution, but really that kind of spills over into audience, has been this fear that people express to us along the way that no one's going to watch the film, or the film's going to get protested by this group or that group, or upset this group or that group, or it's never going to be screened there, never going to be screened there. And the film has consistently been overcoming those hurdles and been so warmly received in over 20 countries. It's been played in festivals or other kinds of settings. We were just counting. We had almost 100 screenings this year since the Berlinale.
Okay, last question.
At any rate, it's important to me because
how are Liat and her children doing right now?
Liat's doing, well, all things considered. She just moved back to the kibbutz that, she was taken from. Her home has been rebuilt. Her kids are, they lost their father, so they're grieving still, but they're all moving forward with their lives. And Liat has become very active in this group called the Parent Circle, which is a group of over 800 Palestinian and Israeli bereaved family members who meet together, work together to call for peace and reconciliation. And that's been a big part of her healing journey, has been actually being in community with specifically other women who have lost loved ones due to this conflict, the other side of the fence. And she's been touring with us around with the film. She's not a public figure. She doesn't really like the limelight at all, but I think she feels a responsibility to be a voice for a different future for Israelis and Palestinians, and so has been, reluctantly sort of taken a mantle to speak, alongside the film.
Well, let me say thank you to you guys and congratulations on making a spectacularly terrific, emotional film that really works on many levels and is, moving and has a great story. And I hope people that are watching this will support the film in the theater first. And if you missed the theatrical run, I suggest you look for it, video on demand. I'm sure it will be out there and available. If not on the big networks, it certainly will be available, through all those VOD, Apple Plus and Prime and all the other suspects. And thanks for being a guest on Westdoc.
Chuck, thank you so much for having us. It's really been an honor to talk with you.
Thank you so much, Chuck.
We really appreciate it.